Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the Winner. We're back for another edition of Diablo III. Today on the channel, we're going to take a look at the starter set for Season 26 for the Witchdoctor class, that being Zunimassa. And I'm going to give it to you straight from the beginning. This is probably the worst starter set that you could potentially use for Season 26 of Diablo. But if you're insistent on running it, we're going to give you a build. Zunimassa's what? 2-piece bonus. Your Fetish Army lasts until they die, and the cooldown of your Fetish Army is reduced by 80%. 4-piece bonus. You and your pets take 3% less damage for every fetish you have alive. 6-piece bonus. Enemies hit by your mana spenders take 15,000 increased damage from your pets for 8 seconds. That's 15,000%. So as you can see, this is a pet build with Fetish Army, so we're going to have to work around the skills that work with pets and everything. So we're going to be using mostly a full set of Zunimassa here, as you see. But we're going to use things to augment the power. So first off, Soul Harvest. Now Soul Harvest stacks up to 10. As you can see here for the offhand, we have to use it. Lukumba's Ornament, which is just basically a placeholder here. Traveler's Pledge, Compass Rose in conjunction. We definitely want to run that. The Ring of Emptiness just here, again, on our placeholder. Mantle of Channeling. While channeling, basically we're going to use Fire Bats for this build, so we'll get increased amount of damage and take less damage whenever we channel our Fire Bats, which we rely on. We also have, obviously, the Belt, which will allow us to do stuff with our Fetish Army. So, for the skills, Piranhas, Pirando, because this is a mana spender. Fetish Army, Legion of Daggers is the way I would recommend to go. Spirit Walk, Honored Guest, that way we could get back some mana because we burn through quite a bit in this build. Vengeful Spears, you saw there. Gargantua, Restless Giant, we're going to rely heavily on the Gargantuas for this build. Fire Bats, Vampire Bats is the way to go. For the passive, Spirit Vessel, Midnight Feast, Confidence Ritual, Grave Injustice. In the Knights Cube, Staff of Cleopatra, Mask of Jerome, and the Short Man's Finger. Now, I am actually going to switch the Staff of Cleopatra, because that's not for the build. What you want is to power up the Gargantua. So what we're going to do is put Spite in our Knights Cube. That is the way that you should definitely go with this build. That way that they get the cleave thing, you'll get more damage, and they'll do better that way. So that's the way you should go. Don't put Cleopatra. Cleopatra will buff your bats, but then your Gargantuas would be pretty weak. Okay, so for the purpose of this showcase, we are going to do a Greater Rift, only a Greater Rift 60 and a Greater Rift 70. The reason for that is Zunimassa is a very slow push build. So it takes incredibly long to get to the Griff Guardian and to clear it. It's a very F-tier armor. It's not good. It's probably the worst set armor available for the Witchdoctor, hands down. It needs buffs, it needs reworks, it needs a lot of things. Okay, so what do you want to do with this build? Well, when you get into the Greater Rift, the first thing you want to do is cast your Fetish Army so that you have your pets there. Next from there, you want to cast your Gargantuas. And then from there, you want to get immediately, as fast as possible, 10 stacks of Soul Harvest so you can do an increased amount of damage. From there, once you have your 10 stacks of Soul Harvest, you want to just cast your Fire Bats. Your Fire Bats will proc the bonuses of your set armor so that it does the increased amount of damage, your pets, and everything of the sort. Every once in a while, you're going to have to look around to make sure that your Gargantuas are not dead, or that your Fetish Armies are not dead. Every once in a while, you're going to have to recast your Gargantuas because they have a tendency to kind of walk off or get out of positioning, because that's just kind of how pets are programmed. Now, in terms of optimization, what would you particularly want to do with this armor to have a good time with it, or at least a decent time with it? Well, for starters, I would recommend on your helm, crit hit chance 6.0%. Obviously, because this build requires intelligence, make sure that you get the max roll of intelligence so you can do the maximum amount of damage possible. From there, I would recommend on your gloves these three stats. Crit hit chance 6.0%, crit hit damage 50%. And then I would also recommend an attack speed of 8.0%. That way your pets can attack a little bit quicker and your Fire Bats will go off a little quicker, which is kind of important for this particular build, because since we're a bit slower in terms of pushing, we have to make up for that with fast attacks. Then from there, I would recommend cooldown reduction, 8.0% wherever possible. The reason for that is because cooldown reduction is very vital for this build. You want to be able to get your Soul Harvest stacks back at 10 whenever fast as possible. You want to be able to cast your Fetish Army as fast as possible. because there's times where you have to recast it, everything to do more damage. I would recommend also, because of the Restless Shrines, you want to be able to cast your Gargantuas again pretty quickly, and they have a pretty slow cooldown, so definitely 8.0% cooldown reduction wherever possible. Resource cost reduction, definitely you should run 8.0% wherever possible as well. In terms of skills that you should power up, I would recommend, first and foremost, wherever you can power up your Gargantua, because that's where they are, your main source of damage primarily comes from. You should get 15% wherever possible. Then from there, I would focus on your Fetish Army, powering them up by 15% wherever possible, so they can do a little bit more damage. A different route you could go is, instead of Fetish Army powering them up, what you could do is you could power up your Vampire Bats, because you might need to get a buff there to do a little bit more damage. But because this is mostly a pet build, and your pets are doing the source of damage, I recommend you focus putting 15% into the pets themselves, and just use everything else to augment their power. Now, there are things you can use besides Masker Jerome. You could use Tasker and Theo if you want them to attack quicker. Keep in mind that you don't have a lot of room on this build to play with, like our ones, because, you know what, you could try to fit Captain Crimson, but you're going to have to use the ring for Zunimassa, which gives you one less ring option to use, which I think is kind of vital for this particular build, having more freedom for your rings and not being locked into a set armor ring. But if you wanted to, you could go that particular route. In my playtesting, I noticed that it's not really worth trying to invest too much in this particular armor. So there's that. Keep in mind that you're going to want to, very early on, if you decide that you're going to continue with this build, which I highly would discourage people to go with, you're going to want to augment your armor pieces being Ancient Legendary, or Primal Ancient Legendary value, with a Legendary Gem that's like at least level 80 to 100. You put in the Kanai's Cube with the recipe, and you augment it that way. Level 100 tends to be about 500 increased intelligence, which is something that you want to do. I don't recommend wasting resources. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Now, like I said before, this is the starter set for the Witchdoctor for Season 26 of Diablo III. If you're new to Diablo III, and you've never played a Diablo season, basically the way it works is that in Chapter 2, 3, and 4, upon completion of each chapter, you get 2 pieces of your Hatred Gift. So, in Chapter 2, you get 2 pieces of your Hatred Gift when you complete the seasonal journey for that one. In Chapter 3, when you complete the seasonal journey, you get another 2 pieces of your Hatred Gift. Chapter 4, you get the final 2 pieces of your Hatred Gift, which is your starter set armor for the class. For this case, it'll be the Zunimassa set. You are always guaranteed a full set of your starter armor for the class that you're picking. You, however, are not guaranteed Ancient Legendary, and Primal Ancient Legendaries can't drop, because in order for a Primal Ancient Legendary to drop in a season of Diablo 3, you have to clear a Greater Rift 70 solo for it to drop. And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to be able to clear a Greater Rift 70 solo before you do your Hatred Gift. It's just mathematically improbable, and it would be silly, because chances are you have a better build by then, if that's the case. So, complete your Chapter 2, 3, and 4, and you will get this armor. Alright, for the Rift Guardian, very simple. Use your Gargantuan, use your Fire Bats, make sure you have your 10 stacks of Soul Harvest, and you should be able to pop the lower level Rift Guardians with relative ease. For Legendary Gems you should be using on this build, Bane of the Trap, most definitely. I would recommend Enforcer for this build, because you are using pets, and you want them to be a bit more tanky. And then I would recommend a Bane of the Stricken. Those 3 gems are probably the best way to go with this particular build, based on the fact that it is, in fact, a pet build. With that being said, how would you farm for this particular armor, the rest of the stuff that you need? Well, this one's a little bit easier to farm with, because of the fact that Soul Harvest is one of the easier weapons to acquire. So my recommendation is, you could do a Greater Rift, where you're doing Greater Rift runs, let's say level 60 or level 70, you do 3 to 4 minute clear times on them, you do about 3-hour run of Greater Rifts, and you should get all the pieces that you need for this build, at least the rings, and you should probably find the weapon relatively easy. It might not be Ancient Legendary, so you could go that route. If you want Soul Harvest the easier way, my recommendation, although you're going to spend a lot of resources, hold the thought on there so we can see. Greater Rift 60, Torment 13 difficulty, as you see, 4 minutes and 55-second clear time. It's a push build. You're never going to get high leaderboard placement, super fast clear time. Just doesn't work with this particular armor. It's just a bad armor. Alright, so, same strategy as before. When you get into the Greater Rift, excuse me, cast your Fetish armies as fast as possible, then cast your Gargantuas, then from there you want to get your 10 stacks of Soul Harvest wherever fast as possible. Use your Piranha to bunch up a whole bunch of enemies together to make it easier to get your Soul Harvest off, and make sure you cast your Gargantuas, and then from there you just let your pets do most of the work while you channel your Fire Bats, and you should have a generally relatively easy time. This is a Greater Rift 7, keep in mind. So, an alternate route that you could go to get your soul harvest is you could just buy a whole bunch of rare ceremonial daggers from the merchant at whatever camp you're at, and then you could use the Kunai Cube recipe to upgrade a rare item. There aren't that many ceremonial daggers in the game, so chances are you're going to get your soul harvest relatively fast that way, as well as getting other things that you'll probably need for better builds that you can do. Now, my advice to people who want to play Witchdoctor for Season 26 of Diablo 3 is that you use this particular armor till you get the Mundunugu set. When you get the Mundunugu set, I would recommend that you switch to Mundunugu as fast as possible. The reason for that is it's an S-tier build. It will do much better than this F-tier build, and it will give you high leaderboard placement, and it'll put you in a better position to have a very good season and get the pets that you need and everything. The sword Zunimassa is not capable of clearing very high greater rifts effectively. Some people say yes, some people say no. I think you're better off with Spirit Barrage. Some people love this pet build, and they say that it's the best way to go. I don't recommend it. I think it's a pretty bad build, in my personal opinion, but it doesn't meet my playstyle. I think it's a kind of weak. But with that being said, I recommend just switching to Mundunugu despite all the nerfs. And then from there, some of the pieces of this gear will work with Mundunugu. For example, the Soul Harvest you're going to keep, the Ring of Emptiness, you would keep on that build. Everything else will get swapped out. Another route you could go, like let's say you don't get the Mundunugu, but you see Jade Harvester fall, you could go that route and swap out till you get Mundunugu. Both of those armors are way better for your seasonal journey than Zunimassa. I can't stress enough how bad of an armor this is going into Season 26. It puts you at a very, very bad start for the season, and if you're new to Diablo 3, it's probably not the route you want to go. In terms of leaderboard placement, this does the worst, probably. Mundunugu's way to go. I would suspect Ina's mantra for Season 26 is going to have high leaderboard placement for at least the first day or so until people get their metagame builds going exactly the way they want them to. So, you know, definitely, this is probably the Witchdoctor's got the roughest way to go here. Now, in terms of Season 26, keep in mind that there is a new endgame, which is called the Echoing Nightmare, in which you basically go through kind of waves of enemies and try to clear out waves. So it's kind of like a, I want to say tower defense, but it's kind of like a survivor type mode where you have to clear waves and waves and waves of enemies. The higher up you get, the better the gear. The higher up you get, more Paragon that you can farm. It is a pretty cool endgame. I think this is a great endgame. It's for the season. I'm hoping that this is something that is so well received for the season that it becomes part of a new endgame for Diablo 3 as a whole. I'm really hoping that we see this get incorporated into the base game for future seasons and everything of the sort. As you are aware of, a lot of Season 26 armors that are going to be focused on for the starter sets kind of hark back to Diablo 2 and Diablo 2 Resurrected. As you're very aware of, Diablo 2 Resurrected's new update is going live roughly on the same day that Diablo 3's update is going live, and then 2 weeks after the latter and everything, sir. I will be covering Diablo 2 content when the new update drops as well, so you're going to be getting a lot more Diablo content from me now that the season is starting for the new season, and then we got new content updates and ladders for Diablo 2, so if you're a fan of Diablo, there's a lot of content that's coming on in the horizon. But like I said, same strategy as before here. You always want to maintain your 10 stacks of Soul Harvest, maintain your Giants, always keep an eye on your Fetish Armies. If you think that a lot of them have died off and they're not working, cast more of them, maintain the Soul Harvest. It's a slow and steady type of wins the race type of build. Keep in mind with Diablo 3, I've always said this many times on the channel, Diablo 3 is a marathon. It is not a race. So a lot of people are like, how can I get the quickest and best build as fast as possible? You're always going to constantly have to optimize. You're always going to constantly have to swap out pieces of gear. Diablo 3, even Diablo 2, just doesn't work that way. It's a matter of time investment. You have to put a lot of time into your seasonal journey. You have to put a lot of time into just the game and invest and swap out places and level up gems and everything of the sort. If you're one of these people that's impatient and just wants to get to endgame, Diablo and dungeon crawlers are probably not for you, because it's just not how pretty much any type of dungeon crawlers work in general. So I advise against trying to rush through things, but if you're trying to get to a faster result, get to Mundunugu first. If you need a sample armor build for Mundunugu, recommend you take a look at our playlist In our playlist, we have their Season 25 Mundunuga build. All the information for that set armor still applies for Season 26. I will be covering Season 26 build in the future. Reason I'm not doing is, obviously, I'm covering the starter set armors first. I'm going to cover the metagame armors next. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be impacting. The next couple sets that I do on the channel are going to be for the other starter sets, that being the Marauder set. Also, we have, what else is there? There's the Marauder set. There is the Magnum Opus set. For the Necromancer, I forgot what we got for the Necromancer. It's a pretty bad Necromancer set, if I remember correctly. So we're going to be covering all of them. So, oh, Pestilence. So those are the next three. And then I have to cover one other one. So we're going to get those out of the way first. And then from there, we're going to work on then metagames and everything. So that's how I always operate on the channel. So definitely let me know what you want to see. And I will definitely then, once I get through the Season 26 starter sets, cover those next. And that's kind of how I always operate on the channel. Alright, so, as you can see here, we did pretty good. 4 chance bonus. Like I said, it's not... The problem with this set, and why I'm not going to show Girder with 80 and 90, is it's just going to take a long time to clear it, and it's just me regurgitating information that you don't necessarily need to hear or see again. So keep that in mind. So we're going to return to base. We're going to check the clear time. On average, you're going to see probably between 5 to 6 minute clear time here. For every 10 greater rifts, add about 45 seconds with this particular build. That's going to do it for today's Diablo 3 video. As always, a like on this video is greatly appreciated. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, definitely consider doing so, as it helps the channel grow. And I will see you for the next Diablo 3 video. Until next time, guys.